G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome back for another Division guide. Today I'm going to teach you guys how to be a cover commando, how to master the cover system. This will be a fairly extensive guide, so use the timestamps down in the description below to skip around if you're a more experienced player already. But for the beginners, I'll be starting off with some of the basics and then moving into some more advanced tips and tricks that I haven't really seen discussed anywhere. So first up, Tom Clancy's The Division is a heavily cover-based tactical shooter. You will be doing some run and gun sometimes to take out certain enemies, to rush enemies, and to take out easier NPCs as you move around, but a lot of your combat is going to be done from behind cover. That means popping out and shooting at enemies, and even blind firing and moving cover to cover. Now I'm playing on the PC version, so if you're playing on either of the consoles, you'll have to translate the controls to yourself. But first up, let's talk about how to take cover. The cover system in this game works on a look-based system, so where your character is looking is where you will take cover if you hold the spacebar. So if I look at this back of this truck here as I move closer to it and hold the spacebar, my character will take cover. Now you will see sometimes these on-screen prompts. These show the section of wall that you'll be taking cover on, and if you're already in cover, you can actually move cover to cover by holding the spacebar down and looking to where you want to go. So if I want to move to this set of blue bins here, these mailboxes, I'll hold down the spacebar and I'll move cover to cover. My character will rush directly to that cover. Oftentimes, when you're fighting NPCs especially, you will be moving cover to cover a lot. When you stay in cover, it's much less likely that you'll be noticed by NPCs. Your character will keep their head down. They'll often run very quick and take the quickest route to cover, so it's typically the best strategy. So we might do things like this, move down cover to cover to advance up on our enemies and take prime locations to fire from. Now, using the cover-to-cover system, your character will try and take the shortest route to the cover, so this will be outlined by a white line you can see on screen just there. And this will sometimes involve jumping over things, running off ledges, and if it's going to cause damage to your character, you will see red exclamation marks, so try and plan your route accordingly. If you want to change this route, you'll have to move your character, or look and move to different areas of cover. Now, sometimes it takes a second for this little route planning line to appear, so it's a good idea to kind of practice the cover system quite a bit and get familiar with where your character is likely to run. So you can see the line is kind of lagged behind me a little bit there, but I know that my character is going to jump directly over this and run directly to that cover. Now, if you want to take more manual control, you can instead press Control to vault over the cover that you're behind. This will also work with climbing up of higher sections like this truck, for example, here. Now, the cover system is fairly good. Nearly anything that looks like cover, even this little section of wall here, can be taken cover, but there are a few things in the game that you'll learn to recognize that won't really work as cover. Some examples are walls that are on the sides of stairs. You often can't take cover while you're actually on staircases. Now, before we do anything else, you absolutely must change some control options for the cover system. By default, for some reason, the worst possible options are selected, and it makes the cover system feel random, erratic, and quite clunky. So, go into the settings and control menu, and there's a couple things we want to change, and I'll explain why. The first one is movement can exit cover. By default, this is set to yes, and I'll show you exactly what this does. So when you're on a cover wall like this, if you move alongside the wall, your character will run left and right across the wall, and that's all well and good. It allows you to move around whilst remaining in cover. Now, with this system off, if you look slightly away from the cover, your character will actually leave cover and stand up. Now, you may not actually want this to happen. Instead, by turning this option off, you'll have much more precise control over exactly when your character leaves cover. So, with movement can exit cover turned off, which is what I highly recommend, when you're in cover, doesn't matter where you're looking, your character will continue running along the cover system, so we can proceed moving along this wall even while we look away. This is great if enemies circle around and flank you. If enemies come up behind you, you can remain in cover while shielded from one side. Let's say one NPC flanks you around this cover, while there's like 5 other NPCs shooting you from that direction. You want to be able to remain in cover while looking this way and moving along if you need to. This just gives you much more precise control, and you can leave cover exactly when you want to by pressing the spacebar. The next option that is very similar is move around corner with button press. You want to swap this to yes. By default, if you move towards the edge of a wall, your character will sometimes, if you hold the right or left buttons down for too long, they'll sometimes move around the corner, and that can be pretty disastrous if that happens mid-combat when you don't mean it to. Turning this on means that you have to press spacebar if you want your character to move around a corner. So that means you can be pushing right as much as you want and your character won't leave the current cover and move around the corner, but if you hold the spacebar, your character will move around. That just means you get much more precise control over exactly when you want to move around the corner. A couple other control options that are a bit more preference-based, but I'll go over anyway and give my recommendations. 180 sprint turn. This allows you to really quickly turn around and run away from enemies. What this looks like is if you're facing this way, you can hold the sprint button and press backwards, and the camera will actually turn around and quickly swap around and you'll start sprinting directly in that direction. Just gives you a little more precise controls and a little faster way to get away. I like having that option enabled, but it might not be everyone's cup of tea. I personally recommend turning combat roll and movement keys off. There's nothing worse than accidentally double tapping forwards and combat rolling in that direction. I'd much prefer having the space key be your combat roll. And then parkour mode makes you automatically jump over things if you keep sprinting at them. I find this to be horrible because a lot of the times you'll want to sprint to cover and take cover, and you can always just hold control if you want your character to vault over. So I recommend having parkour mode turned off. So now I want to talk about the basics of firing from cover. The primary way that you'll be firing from cover is to hold down your aim down sights button, and your character will pop up from cover, exposing themselves and giving you accurate aim to fire upon your enemies. If you just look in a direction and fire, your character will blind fire while remaining behind cover. This only exposes the top of your head and some of your forearms, leaving you mostly behind cover. The drawback is that you have much less accuracy. You can see my aiming reticles spread right out, and those bullets will be much more erratic in which they fire. Blind fire should be used sparingly because it is so inaccurate, but it's very useful when you have an enemy having sustained fire on you, or when enemies are really close and you need to stay behind cover because you're taking a lot of fire. If you fire at an enemy with blind fire and hit them a few times, sometimes you can stagger them or interrupt their fire, and that'll give you a chance to finish them off. So usually it'll look like something like this. You're taking sustained fire, you'll fire a couple times, and then you'll aim down sights and finish them off. When firing from low cover like this, it might be better to fire from the side than over. If I sit in the middle of this cover here and aim down my sights, my character will pop themselves out, revealing their upper torso and head section, able to fire out over the top. However, if an enemy is off to the side, this area here, I may want to instead move to the edge here. You'll see my character take a slightly different stance and the camera will change slightly. We can then aim around the side, and that only reveals the top of our head over the top of the cover. Now, if you move left or right slightly, you can actually change exactly where you're popping out. So if you want to aim more at enemies that are over the top of cover that you don't have a clear shot on from here, you can either just look right a little bit, or you can actually move right slightly to change your stance. This is pretty helpful for taking extra cover and picking correct angles against enemies that you basically can block fire from over in this direction by looking out the left-hand side down here and remaining more safely in cover. The other control that's really important to know and will make your cover system use a lot better is shift to change your third-person camera view. So by default, your character will pick the most logical shoulder to look over. So if you're ever on the right-hand side of cover, they'll look over their right shoulder, and as you move to the left, they'll look over their left shoulder. Now, as you're popping out from cover like this, you know, my character's looking over his right shoulder right now. I can tap shift and look over my left shoulder, and that will change your viewpoint pretty dramatically in some cases. It doesn't really seem to make much difference here, but depending on which cover you're hiding behind and which cover your enemy is behind, sometimes they might be out of view from one shoulder angle, but if you look over the other shoulder angle, you can get a much clearer sight on them. As a bit of a side note, this can be used out of cover to good effect as well. Let's say I'm firing at some enemies on the other side of this bin here, but I want to move over to the other side, then it's much more useful to change over my shoulder and start firing at them from that direction, pretending we're firing at this guy here, than it is to move all the way to the left, exposing your entire body to their fire. So now let's talk about some more advanced tactics that will take your use of the cover system to the next level and make you truly a cover commando. So the first one is rolling to cover. This will speed up your getting into the next cover that you want to get to, and it'll also make you much harder to hit. If I just look over at this cover here, let's say I want to move to this hazmat truck just here, and I'll hold space, my character will just run there in a straight line. They'll keep their head down, and it makes you a bit of a hard target to hit, but a good shooter will be able to take some shots at you, and maybe even get some nice headshots as you're running to cover. So that's not good enough for us. We want to be an absolute cover commando. So what I'm going to do is start holding shift to start my running to cover, and once I am close enough to cover, I'm actually going to double tap space to do a commando roll, hold space, and enter the next set of cover. So let's give that a go here. So you can see my character actually commando rolled into the next cover and instantly took cover. That made me a much more erratic target. My head was moving constantly. There's no way anyone would be able to get a headshot with anything but extreme luck when I'm actually doing that commando roll, and I got to that cover a little bit quicker as well. Now, there's some even more advanced things you can do with this commando role tactic as well. You may recall earlier that I mentioned the cover is based on a look-based system, and this is pretty important for this because your character will take cover exactly where you're looking. So what you can actually do is, let's say I'm running from an enemy right now, I'm rogue and I'm being chased in the Darkzone. I can run behind this truck, do a commando roll around it, and then take cover just behind it and instantly return fire on my enemy. This is a little trickier and will take some practice, but let's give it a go. That sort of movement is very erratic and unpredictable and very quick as well. The ability to get behind cover really quickly and instantly turn your viewpoint around to start firing at an enemy will get you some nice kills in the Darkzone. Now, this next advanced tip is a tactic that I've not seen discussed at all, and it's what I'm going to go ahead and coin the sneaky peek. So, usually when you peek out from behind cover to fire an enemy, you expose, a good section of your body. This allows the enemy to return fire, and if you're dealing with something like a sniper rifle wielding enemy, then they can take a good shot at you, even score a headshot and take you down as you try and return cover to them. Because the suppression mechanic is not very strong in PvP, this can be quite deadly, and it can make it hard to take on an enemy that's already kind of out of cover looking down at you. Now, because we're a cover commando though, we're not going to simply pop out and expose our entire body to shoot at them. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do the sneaky peek. Now, I've discovered that as long as your aiming reticle is over an enemy, you can fire through a wall and hit them. So this soldier, you might have to peer through the fog a little bit, this dead soldier lying over there who's been returning fire at us, we can remain entirely behind cover just here, and we can actually fire bullets past him. You can see the tracers moving straight past and even bouncing off the wall there. So although my character's actually aiming at the corner of the truck, because my aim cursor is exposed and directly on him, even though I'm behind cover, I can keep firing at him. So the way you're going to do this is you can pop out from cover and then just move to the right while holding your aim down sights, or you can be a little further along, start aiming down sights before you get to the edge of the wall, and just peek just out far enough to fire at them. You can actually get a pretty good view most of the way around a corner, and you can see I can even shoot this glass just here. Just in case you want a confirmation, you can see I'm damaging the glass, even while remaining almost entirely behind cover. From anyone standing over at that angle, my elbow is the only thing that's exposed. They're going to have a really hard time returning fire on me. Just to compare, this, top torso, shoulders, arms, head, all exposed. Even my lower body is fairly exposed as well. To this, which basically only exposes the corner of my elbow, and not really even my lower body. You can see how far you can look around that cover like that too with the sneaky peeking. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty broken. I think that Ubisoft is probably gonna have to fix this, because the fact that I can fire on that light right there while remaining entirely behind cover is maybe a little bad. If you want to get even sneakier with this sneaky peeking, you can actually create little firing holes for yourself. The corners of these walls, like concrete walls like this one, are actually physical objects, and if you take a little chunk out of them, you can actually fire through them and then hit the wall. Just as another tip, because I want to cram as much value into this video as I can as possible, you can also fire through car windows too. So if you hang out in the middle of the car instead of looking around the edges, which exposes you to fire, you can actually hang out in the middle of the car, and if there's another target on the other side there, you can use the same sort of sneaky peek style aiming to fire straight through the windows. It gets a little hard to see, but if you've got someone pulsing an enemy, or you could fire out enough of the windows, then you can start to see them and start to fire at them. You'll see here when I move around that the wall on the other side is full of holes, so you are actually able to fire through these windows. So guys, there you have it. I do actually think that the cover system in this game is pretty damn good and overall pretty elegant. There are a couple of issues like that sneaky peeking that might need to be reviewed by Ubisoft, I think, but for the most part I really enjoy this cover system, and you will too once you learn to use some of these sorts of tips and tricks, and once you actually learn the mechanics of them and especially change those options in the settings. So guys, if you have any questions about anything I've shown here or any other suggestions or things I may have missed, then let me know in the comments below. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.